Bob Staley was an Atchison treasure, and he will be missed by the entire community. We will long remember his legacy of wisdom, humor, love of family and friends, and that infectious laugh. Bob lived his life to the fullest, enjoying everyone and everything. We have a heavy heart with the passing of our beloved Bob, but we celebrate your life so well spent. Last June, I had the honor of having Bob on the United Country Good News show, and that conversation was one I will treasure forever. I believe Bob's family and friends would enjoy hearing this again. The next 2 Sundays and Wednesdays, the radio will air and replay this special conversation in Bob's honor. In our studio today is one of my all-time favorite people and my heroes, Mr. Bob Staley. You know, Bob, the Reader's Digest a few years ago used to have a segment called My Most Unforgettable Character, and that's what you are. You're my most unforgettable character.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Nice to be on your list.
I've been really wanting to have you on just to talk about you.
Me?
You're not a native to Atchison. You came here from Iowa, correct?
Right. I came here to run a loan company. In 1951, I was transferred here, and had never been south of Omaha before, but here I am, and I'm still here.
You are the definition for entrepreneur. You were telling me earlier about, some of the businesses, because you started out in the loan business, but you've got a bail bonds business, an auction business. Tell me about how all of that came to be.
Well, it evolved from way back when, I guess. And I was a boy on the farm, and I was 23 years old, and my dad was wanting to get off the farm, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't really want to be a farmer, and Dad said, well, why don't you go to auction school? We got the Wallace Farmer magazine, which came out of Topeka. That's the only farm magazine back in those days that I knew of, and you could go to auction school for $100. Dad went to the bank, borrowed the $100, because $100 was a lot of money back in 1943.
Sure it was.
Because about 6 or 7 of those would buy a new car.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, and gave me sent the $100 to them, and I took a train, the Milwaukee train, to Chicago, and went down to Decatur, Indiana, a Reppert School of Auctioneering, and I was there for 30 days. It cost me $100 for 30 days. That included board and room. Came home, and the school, they told us, now when you get home, you ask your dad who's the best auctioneer in the territory. Not the one he likes, but who gets the most money for his product. Mm-hmm. Well, he picked a guy about 25 miles from home. And so I went over and talked to the guy, and the guy said, yeah, I can use you. But I said, well, now one thing about it, I can't go to work till we get done shucking corn. And when I got through with that around Thanksgiving time, I went over and chatted with him. Yeah, he says, I got a sale this coming Saturday. He said, I could use you. So I went over there and worked the sale with him that day. And very few people I knew over there, because I'm 25 miles from home, and the sale was about another 8 or 10 miles on west. But the sale was over that evening. We're having dinner from the sale, and I happened to sit beside the banker that clerked the sale. He said, how come you aren't in the service? I said, well, I only have one eardrum. I had scarlet fever when I was a baby. He said, how'd you like to work in the bank? I said, well, I hadn't thought about it. He said, come over and see me tomorrow. Well, I went over, and he hired me. I started to work there that following Monday, and worked there 4.5 years. And I learned something. Learned how to deal with people. I learned business and how to handle money. And it worked out. I was there 4.5 years. And all that time I did auction work along with working in the bank. Mm-hmm. So I left there and went to work for a loan company in Omaha. And I was with them for about a year over at Perry, Iowa, over by Des Moines. And this office here had been in business about a year and a half, called American Loan. And so he was going to Pittsburgh, Kansas to run an office for somebody else. So they asked me if I'd like to come down. And I said, sure would, because I was wanting to get my own office eventually. And so the first thing I did, went to look to the library and looked up Atchison, Kansas. And of course it told, it was an old town, I can tell that, told about the college here and about Amelia Earhart. And so those things were about all I knew when I came here. Pappy Banks was a cab driver, and my supervisor was with me. And so we got out on Commercial Street and started going west, and I'm looking up at these big old buildings, My gosh, they're big and they're old. So we get up to the corner of 7th and Commercial. They often was at 705. He turns left and parks in front of the hotel. But that's where I'm going to be staying till I find myself a room. But that's how I got here. And first Saturday night I'm in town, the guy that was running the office, he and his girlfriend get me a blind date. So we go to St. Joe at the Frog Hop. Well, I find out that his girlfriend's a lot better dancer than the other one. And so he left town, so I took over. And we've been married 62 years.
Wow.
I didn't intend to stay here, but I own cemetery lots here, and don't intend to leave town. And it's a good town.
Got to stay now. It is.
It's a good town to raise kids in. I got no complaint with it. I made one mistake back in 1959, about 58 or 9, long in there. People leave town, well, they want to go for a better place. Well, that's fine. But we all have our choices. There's a lot of people in this town that were not born and raised here. Like I said, I made a mistake when it come to the mall. I was for the mall. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And I got out and campaigned for it, worked with it. And one of the biggest opponents I had at it was John Levin. Mm-hmm. And I went over and talked to John a couple of times. And John was right. Looking back on it, John was right as he could be. But it's one of the things that's in the past, and now we've got to live with it. I've got a good theory on the mall, and a story I'd like to tell about it, too. But way back days.
You and Rod Deerking.
Okay.
Now, how did that relationship
Well,
ever
and then
start?
when I came here, the office had 3 employees.
This is at the loan company?
The loan company,
The
yes.
loan company had
American
3
Loan
employees.
Plan. Then working there was Jack Ahrensberg, was my trainee there. Short time later, Jack and his brother Lee bought the shoe store which his parents at one time had owned.
Sure.
And they bought it back and went into a very successful business. Anyhow, Jack left, and so I ended up hiring Rod Deerking. And one of the greatest things I ever did. We became business partners, friends, and got along. We was in partnership for a long time and never had an argument. If we disagreed on something, one of us would get up and walk out, and come back the next morning, and you agree. And that's the way it worked.
And I can remember growing up here in Atchison, the Staley and Deerking auctions, we went to those a lot. And I know you auctioned off my parents' things at the farm. But tell me how you ended up getting together, because that's kind of an interesting story.
Rod had would work for me for about 3 years, and he went to Grand Island, Nebraska to run an office for the same company. And I stayed on here, because I worked for that company 8.5 years. When I left the company to go to work to run Drury Finance Company, started Drury Finance, really, Rod came back to run the office. And he just was here a short time, and they hired him to run the water company. When the city took the water company in as part of their product, it had been operating as a separate utility. He wouldn't work for the city, and that's when he left and ended up back with me in the loan company business.
But I love the story about how you started the auction company.
We had 2 businesses we started from scratch. And the first one was when he was working for me. He'd been there about a year or so, and I financed a car on a Saturday for this couple, and that following Tuesday or Wednesday, she gave me a call. She was over at the police station. She said, "Staley, come over to the police station. I need you." I said, What do you mean you need me? Well, she says, "I need $100. Can you come over? I need to talk to you." So I didn't know what was going on, so I walked over to the police station just a block and a half away. And Gus Wood was a policeman here at that time, who later became police chief. And anyhow, they had picked her up for a DUI. The tail light was out on the car, and they stopped her and found out she'd been drinking beer, because these 4 gals once a month played a little poker and had a few beers.
They were just a fun group, weren't they?
Right.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it was $100. Well, I said, "I haven't got $100. And they said, "Well, you can just sign for it." So I signed for it. Well, about 2-3 weeks later, I get a call again from another gal over there. So I went over, I had no idea what was going on, and I signed for it again. Well, when I came back, my Deerking said, "You know what you're doing?" "What do you mean, know what I'm doing?" He said, "Well, you're a bail bondsman." Explain that to me. So he did, and his dad was sheriff at that time. And so I said, well, how many bail bond companies are there up here? He said, I don't know. And there was none local. It was all out of Kansas City or St. Joe or Topeka. So that's when he and I started the bail bond business. That's the way we got the bail bond business started, and still doing it today.
So at that point in time, you had an auction company,
Right?
a bail bonds company,
Right.
and a loan company.
Right. Rod and I worked 7 days a week. We didn't have any money. We were earning money. The way the auction business started was an odd one also. Rod was running the water company, and his aunt, Mamie Miller, died. Lived up on the 1100 block of Kearney Street. So he goes out to see.
Rod went out to see.
Rod went
the
out
gentleman
to see.
who was in charge.
Yeah, he went out
of
to
the
see the auctioneer out at Effingham.
Oh, that was Hawk.
Yeah, Wilson Hawk.
Wilson Hawk,
He went out
that
to see
one?
Wilson Hawk about doing the sale, and they set a temporary date, evidently. But Rod Deer King's dad thought it was a definite date, because about 3 weeks later, the ad comes out in the Globe on a Saturday where Wilson Hawk has 2 auctions, both starting at 1 o'clock on Saturday, and
it's pretty hard to
at
clone
1 o'clock,
yourself,
yeah.
isn't it?
So he called Rod and said, Rod, I can't do that sale. I got one. You're going to have to hire another auctioneer. Well, he couldn't find anybody, and so he came down to see me, because he knew that I had did auction work in Iowa. And so I agree. He said, I'll give you $50 to do the sale. Bunch of junk, he said. And he was right. At that time, we thought it was junk, but it wasn't. And he said, I want to sell the house, and we'll give you $50 for that. Anyhow, we never told anybody. Come to that Saturday morning, beautiful day, a fall day, and we get there. My gosh, I got the biggest crowd. We didn't know it. We had the best stuff. It was all antique. And there's one sale we did not really earn our money, because we were not getting as much money as we probably should have, because we were new in the business.
Sure.
But things changed shortly, because then we started getting an education in the auction business. And but the sale was a success that day. And the sale's over. Why, Roy Ostertag, who used to have infant furniture store here, had sold out about 2-3 years before that. And he had carried a lot of his own paper financing the furniture, repossessed a bunch of the furniture, and took it down to Bill Griffin's warehouse and had it stored down there. I got a bunch of stored furniture, he said. I'd like to sell it. Rod said, let's do it. I had a great time today. And he did. He worked the ring, and it was something new to him.
Nobody could ever accuse Rod Deer King of being shy.
And he was willing to learn. And so, so we advertised, went down, and we had a great sale lined up. Rod says, I got to learn how the auctioneers chant. So he knew Tony Brule had a record on how to be an auctioneer. So he borrowed that record, and he practiced.
So he learned from a record how to be an auctioneer.
Rod did. And so come down that sale that Saturday. I had never heard him yet. And I'd been going on about an hour. He said, I'm ready whenever you want me to. And I said, okay, we got that bunk bed coming up here. I'll put you on it. And so we got the bunk bed, and Rod started out. And, well, he was up to $65. Pretty soon he's back to $45 again. And this guy said, well, Rod, I bid you $65 a little bit ago. Oh. So he starts at $65 and finally gets it sold. The next item he sells is a box spring mattress, which today is illegal. Was then too, but we did not know it.
But you
we
didn't
sold
know
it.
it, so you
sold
sold
they were
it
nice.
anyway.
And he gets about halfway through, and he said, I don't know what you're doing. I can't do this. I'm out of breath. I got to quit. And he was what I call wolfing the air instead of conserving it. Anyhow, but he changed, and the following week we had another sale come up to us. And Pat Morley had worked with Rod and I for a period of time. He was running the credit unit at the foundry. And his aunt had died and asked us to sell his stuff, which we did. That's what got us started in the auction business. And but neither one knew much of anything about values. And so Rod knew Pappy Bose real well from out at Lancaster. So Rod and I went out and talked to him. And he took us through his shop, trying to get prices. We wrote down a lot of things. And he had some books on auctions, and we studied those books. Rod studied glassware, and I studied furniture. And it didn't take us very long, and we were doing well.
Now, Bob, I knew this was going to be 2 shows because you are such a fantastic guest. And we want to continue, but we're going to stop right here. But everybody, listen next week because we're going to do 2 shows with Bob Staley. So, Bob, we're gonna follow this up here in just a little
Okay.
bit because I want to hear more. I got a lot more questions, Bob. So, everybody, thank you so much for coming in today, and everyone tune in next week because we'll have the second half of my interview with Bob Staley. Thanks so much, Bob.
Oh, happy to be here.